Welcome to this crash course on the Great Awakening. This is Module 1, and in Part 1 we need to start with the secret government. Quick reminder before we start. Remember, this is going to be a very brief overview on what it seems to be a very complicated topic. In fact, all of the topics that we're going to discuss here in the crash course are very deep and they have all their own rabbit holes. So this is just to incentivize a little bit of curiosity on everybody or anybody that is watching this so they can go about their own research and investigation. So this module is going to be, like I said, understanding the matrix, and that's why we need to start with the secret government. We all have known about this, we all have heard about this, we all have different degrees of understandings of what this actually means, but I want to take you through the ladder of what I see in how this is perceived in many ways. We need to start with what everybody can agree on, which is the government. We have a government, and some people who are at the very surface level of the rabbit hole will only say that the government is sort of corrupt, but that's just the way things are. Now, the thing is that we have gotten used to what it is to have a control system based on a government, or a government based on a control system, whichever way you want to see it. And that means that we don't have what, like, say, the Chinese have with the Taoist type of government, which was just basically letting people be who they were and allowing things to happen as they were, and they had a completely different system. We have now what is a control system based on these type of governments. So that means that naturally there's going to be power over others, control hierarchy systems, and all this stuff. Now, beyond the surface level, we know that there is some sort of corruptions, and I know, and I say that the government is usually corrupt. That's the first thing to admit, and it gets you into conspiracy theories because the mainstream would say that the government is not corrupt. The government is actually perfect and beautiful. So we all know that's a lie that the media reinforces in some way or another. They just point fingers now and then to other people, and that's what the governments do. Governments are there to represent the people, and that's why that it is the final link, or the surface link, between the people and those behind the scenes of the government. So we can all agree that there is something behind that that curtain, if you will, and that is that they work basically with corporations, banks, institutions, cartels, mafias, and syndicates, just to name a few. They actually report these type of workings, and this is what we call lobbying. I mean, there is a lot of information, but then again, this gets into the territory of discrediting information or misinformation, and it gets into the conspiracy theory realm, where everybody seems to be afraid because they don't want to be called wacky or cuckoo or just tinfoil hat. But this is the reality of how it works. All these corporations, banks, syndicates, and so on, they feed the government so they can do their bidding. The government do their bidding, as opposed to the government doing the population's bidding. And so this is, again, it's a deep rabbit hole into how we got into this. And it's been accelerating over the last 100 and something years when we established certain financial systems that are at the core of everything. But that we know. So in the brief overview that I can bring here, we can say that the government, the surface government that we have, has a curtain, and behind the curtain there is this amalgamation of institutions that lobby and influence the government to make decisions for their own benefit. The next thing is that to keep this secret and to keep this away from the people, they need to create confusion and what is called compartmentalization. So they make basically blocks of in a structure where anybody in that block would think that they are at the highest level of that institution. But in reality, there's actually deeper layers of these compartmentalization that they create for their system. It could be the financial system, it could be the government system, it could be education, it could be anything. And especially the military industrial complex is one of those that has probably the highest compartmentalization that exists in the realm of what we call the secret government. So that is the next step by which the secret government operates. They create this block so people cannot know about the other blocks and the ones behind or deeper. This is done, of course, with the purpose of having information retained and only encapsulated in that particular block, like I say. So this is actually where a lot of the insiders come out from. If you follow any sort of conspiracy theory of any kind, you will see that there are always insiders that say they work for said institution, and they tell stories about how they work and what they do. We get into ufology, into suppressed technology, into repressed history, and so on. We also get into education and all this stuff, but we'll get to that in part 2 of this module, which is still understanding the matrix. So now we have not only that there is a surface government and that there are people behind the scenes, but there's also a compartmentalization where it's kept a secret. The next thing is that who owns this? Who creates these institutions? Who manages it? Of course, there needs to be, as the pyramid goes up, there needs to be a sort of filtering of people who own and create agendas for these institutes. It's not just all at random. There's obviously a big agenda that's been developing over time. And now we get into bloodlines and families and certain groups and secret societies and so on. So these are the people that actually are creating the agendas for every one of these institutions, and they have a very, very intricate web of information that they manipulate so they can create or manifest the reality that they want. Okay, so now we are getting deeper into what this actually means and what it actually represents. Beyond that, we can tell that there is no specific country, there's no specific family, there's no corporation or transnational. In fact, just like David Icke mentions, they work as a transnational corporation, meaning that they work behind a specific layer where they just point out to specific people and corporations and institutions to do something that will benefit and further their interest. Of course, beyond this level, there is no risk of losing a corporation or an institution or a banking system that they have, or a chain. It doesn't matter, because all of those are just pieces that they move. At this level, they are playing basically everything from behind the scenes. And that's how they get away with it. There's no loyalty to any sort of race, nationality, group, or anything like that. That's why the secret societies have their own agreements. So that's one of the deepest layers that we can get. Now, the question is, what are these people getting out of this? And why are they doing it? It's clearly not for money, because they have all the money in the world. I believe there's only 8 families that own more than 50% of the rest of the population, or something like that. There's always some statistics shown about the worth of these families, and it really goes beyond that. Even these statistics are kind of naive in the perception of what they actually own. This is just superficial wealth that they have. But these families, these secret societies, and these groups actually have a vast amount of resources and money. What they don't have is the people, and that's why we come in. They follow a specific philosophy that is control over others for power, and that power is used for their own benefit, for their own gains. That's how they create this, and they maintain it and sustain it. So again, this is just the way they operate and how they benefit. What's the purpose? Well, they do it through manipulation and power over time to create this control system, because again, they need us to create this reality the way they want it, and they need us to be satisfied to a certain point, but enough, say, alive, so we can create another type of energy, which is actually where this goes beyond the physical or human level, and it's at the point where we know the metaphysical reality comes into place. And this is what we call the people who are really in control of all this stuff, those who have handed down the philosophy of manipulation of others and control over others. So what we call in the law of one, service to self, everything for their own gain. These entities have been called different names over time. Lately they have been called reptilians, even though they're not reptilians, all of them. These are interdimensional beings that have been controlling the population over time through the structure of secret societies. Not the population itself, even though there is some manipulation there, but is mostly the people in control that they care for. This is a hierarchical system. The higher they are, you can probably know this if you work in corporations, the higher they are, the less they care about the people down there. As long as they get shuffled around and they do their work, that's all they care. So at this level, at the highest level of what it is, the manipulation system in planet Earth, we know that these are entities who have been called Deigenes in the past, Archons in some other cultures, reptilians, like I said, Nephilims, and all basically are in the same spectrum of negative entities. These negative entities have handed down this philosophy for their own benefit, because their philosophy is controlling, and the more they control, the more they get polarized. This is another term we talk about in the law of one, polarization towards the negative. That's their purpose here. So again, let's recap what this first secret government means and how it's layered. First, we have the superficial government, which is corrupt, and we know it, works for other corporations and other institutes who are behind the scenes. Second, we have the compartmentalization, and this is how they keep everything secret. This compartmentalization means that they have no access to other blocks. There's no public information, and people work in blocks specifically so they can develop technology, they can develop education, a new sort of cultural behavior, and so on and so forth. This goes beyond entertainment and scholarship and so on. Science is very involved here. Then we get into the people who are actually doing all this and pulling the strings, if you will. These are the blood families, the bloodline families, and other, sects or secret societies that create this control over the agenda right now. And that's really the human representation. The next thing is that they work as a transnational corporation. They owe no loyalty to anybody, to any government, to any country, any culture, society, peoples, nobody. They are their own entities. And at this level, of course, they have all the power to do this. What's their gain? Manipulation, to control and have power over others for their own benefit, and this is just for their own skin, if you will. And lastly is their masters are interdimensional beings, which in the conspiracy theories get very ridiculed, people who talk about this, but it's the reality, and that's how it is. They're called reptilians, archons, and so on, but these are just negative entities. Just what we have, like we have positive entities, angelic beings also helping, and we can see this in our cultures, but we haven't gotten there yet. So this is the secret government as we know it, and this is just how it works. This is what the information points at, and this wraps up the first part of this first module, Understanding the Matrix. Now, I gotta tell you, if you feel overwhelmed and at some point challenged in your convictions, don't be afraid about all this information. This actually means that you are on the right path. I'll see you in the next video.